Hey everybody, you're about to hear a clip of a conversation I had with James Cameron, the extraordinary screenwriter and director of films like Titanic, The Terminator, and my favorite, Avatar. I was pretty universally teased about the fact that I had put out tweets saying that if Western civilization survives, it will be because enough people see Avatar. Well, there's some serious truth to that because right now, with its re-release in China, that film is now the highest grossing film in the world. And I think there's a reason for it. I think people are enchanted by the force of Pandora and the wisdom of the Na'vi and the drama of the Avatar. There's some very, very serious themes that are covered in that movie. And the fact that those themes are presented in kind of comic book form, I think is the genius of Jim Cameron. So the way the American capitalists and joined with the American military were out to get the unobtainium, and they are willing to destroy the indigenous people and the indigenous ecosystem in order to do that. Hello. This is not a cartoon story. This is a very real story, and we're living it right now. And I think Avatar has a lot of wisdom to give us. So, as you can imagine, I was so excited that I was able to have as my guest on the podcast Jim Cameron. You're about to hear a little clip. Please go over to the Marianne Williamson podcast YouTube channel, subscribe, and then go to Spotify and Apple and rate and review and do all those things that you're supposed to do with podcasts these days. And more than anything else, enjoy the conversation. This man is such a genius, not only as a filmmaker, he's even a deep sea explorer. Here he is. Jim Cameron. Jim Cameron, I can't thank you enough for being on the podcast with me. It's just an honor to have a chance to talk to you.
Well, it's absolutely a pleasure to be invited on your show or podcast or whatever we call it. I guess it's a show these days, right?
Whatever it is, as you know, it's content that matters, not form. If anybody has made that clear, it's you. Oh. So Albert Camus said that fiction is where it's the lie where we get to tell the truth. And the thing that so fascinates me about Avatar is that with this fantastical world that you've created, you tell such very profound truths. And I'm very excited to have an opportunity to talk to you about that. If it's okay, I want to ask you something even before we get into the movie itself. One of the things that fascinates me about you is that you're from Canada. It fascinates me that your childhood was spent there in the forests there. And so I'm interested, you've talked before about how transformative your childhood experiences were, particularly in terms of your connection with the forest and what you bring to us, of course, on Pandora and the forest there. Do you think, obviously we have great forests in the United States as well. Do you feel that if you had been brought up here in the United States, it would have been the same thing for you? And do you feel, I know you're a Canadian citizen now, it interests me because you seem to have just enough distance from the imperialism, from the colonialism, from the economic insanity. There seems to be that just enough distance to be able to speak more truthfully into it. Is there something there about your being Canadian?
Very probably. I wouldn't want to overplay it because, Canada is subject to all of those factors as well. And they've had various, governments there that have been, more involved in sort of the rape of the land, if you will. And our current, government there is less so, which is good. And it goes back and forth. The pendulum swings in the States. It swings here in New Zealand, where I am now. It swings in Canada. I think, the child is the father of the man, and so I'm very much the product of my early experiences, which were a combination of being Canadian, being rural, and having an inquisitive mind and wanting to spend time in nature, which was also possibly a function of its time. Had I been the same person now, at that age, in that same environment, might I have spent my childhood in video games and not gone out into the woods? So, our time, our specific time on the planet, I think, makes a difference. I think Canadians tend to be a little more, there's the joke about Canadians being polite. But I think it comes from them being a generation closer to a rural environment, being a little bit more on a frontier, being a little bit harsher environment. People have to pull together a little bit more. There's maybe a little more sense of community there. So yeah, Canadians are polite. I'm always saying I'm sorry to people.
Well, it didn't seem to me so much just even polite as just a perspective on what's happening in the United States.
Yeah.
But like you said, you see it everywhere. But the United States so embodies it in such a way, and you were so out there with the truth telling about it. You were just talking about children being in the forest, children being with nature, and obviously your connection to nature goes not only the land, but also the ocean, also outer space. And yet at the same time, and this is what makes you so phenomenally you, is you have this master of both worlds thing going on, where you have this, in fact, it's three worlds, because not only do you have this profound connection to nature that you can take us right into, you're a portal right into it, then this profound capacity technologically, and the genius of the exploration. It's so interesting because when you watch the videos of the teams you worked with for the submersive into the bottom of the ocean, it's very similar to the team of geniuses that you're working with to make Avatar, right?
Well, it turns out, you need the same kind of inquisitive people that think outside the box to do exploration and to do innovation. They're very similar sort of mental processes for people. First of all, you can't do it yourself, so you're going to be part of a team. How do you lead a team? How do you inspire a team? What is the storytelling that you create around what you're doing and what you're attempting to do together? What are the challenges? How do you overcome those challenges? How do you deal with the defeats that inevitably come along, or I should say, the setbacks? And it's very similar when you're at the cutting edge of image creation, like we were for Avatar, for example, or creating a brand new robotic or submersible vehicle to go into the deep ocean. I find it attracts the same type of people that are curious, that are kind of self-motivating, that don't mind kind of long hours because they have a sense of mission or a sense of goal.
Well, what you just said is very obvious when you're watching a video about the making of Avatar, and then you watch a video about the putting together the team for the submersive. The big difference, of course, is that if you get it wrong with a movie, you just got it wrong with a movie. You get it wrong with deep sea exploration, somebody dies, namely yourself.
Yeah, there's no second take.
No second take. So there's that element of risk. And really, when you're talking about any kind of exploration, whether you're talking about exploring in outer space, exploring in the ocean, or even exploring in the natural world of the earth, for the explorer, there is always that element of danger, isn't there? Always that element of risk.
Yeah.
And I think that...
Yeah. Go ahead,
please,
sorry.
Go on. Well, I think it's interesting, your not only exquisite understanding of all those things, but then your exquisite ability to take us there. But I think that the danger that you experienced, the risk of real danger that you experienced with your deep sea exploration is an important element of Avatar. Because what comes across very clearly is we are in danger.
Yes.
A great evil has come upon us.
Yes, right.
And I think if Avatar didn't have that element to it, it wouldn't be the powerful piece of truth-telling that it is.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
When you have, of course, you probably know, Jim, I have been rather universally teased about my tweets about Avatar.
Yeah.
And I have said, and when I was preparing for this interview, watching it again, reading even more, my enthusiasm has only grown, and my respect and admiration has only grown, and my recognition of its relevance has only grown. So I have been long a person who would... Thank you. I've long been a person who would quote Jefferson, Jesus, Martin Luther King, Jack Sully, Nigeria, I don't care who's saying it.
Right.
But when Nigeria's mother says, "We will see whether your insanity can be cured."
Yes.
That's what I'm always curious about with you, because I don't think that there's any person in public life that so clearly understands, number one, the technological genius that can be employed. It seems to me that with what you have achieved, you're demonstrating we have the genius. We could do this. We could save the planet. So on one hand, you're dealing with this profound sense of what's possible, but also you are dealing with and revealing to us and communicating to us the profound sense of danger if we don't get it right.
Well,
How do you?
yeah, it's look, I'm torn on a daily basis. I think we sit at this equipoise between, the angels of our better nature, which includes our consciousness and our ability, not just our ability to emote and relate to each other and be empathetic, but our ability to create these things, to have this technical civilization, to have a higher understanding of the universe around us, to do astrophysics, to do planetary science, to do the biological sciences and genetics and so on, all the things that we're understanding that were never understood. For 99% of the human experience on Earth, we now understand things we never understood before. It hasn't made us better in terms of our interactions with each other. One could argue we're even going in the wrong direction compared to, let's say, so-called primitive man. Indigenous peoples innately have a cooperative spirit and an empathetic relationship with each other that I think far surpasses what we have. So, I always feel like we're right on that razor's edge between, kind of the demons of our greed and aggression and the angels of our better nature, our ability to understand, our ability to see the future and act on it, our ability to see each other and act on that empathetic connection. We have both of those things, and it's always been a war. I mean, I read a very good book recently, maybe you've read it, called Humankind. It's by a Dutch author named Rutger Bregman, I believe. And if you haven't read it, you absolutely should. And
I think I've heard of it.
It deals with that exact subject. And there's been the sort of the Hobbesian view that we were savages, that we were uncivilized, that we lived these brutish, short lives, and then we became civilized. And then we had these kind of patriarchal, top-down, law and order imposed structures that kept people from being the savage beings that they are, and that allowed us to progress. Then there's the Rousseauian vision, the so-called noble savage, which has been dismissed as naive, but turns out with, anthropology and sociological research to be the more true, which is indigenous peoples. They don't have patriarchal top-down leaderships. They have innate communities of cooperative people. And this was our big sort of number one with a bullet killer app that allowed us to survive and to populate the entire planet, was our ability to cooperate. So it turns out that the Rousseauian kind of noble savage, so-called naive view that's been dismissed for most of the post-Enlightenment and industrial era and up to the present, turns out to be the more true version of us. And that gives me a great deal of hope.
Not only a more true version, but a more sophisticated version.
Yes.
It's so interesting when Parker Selfridge talks about them as savages. And we realize that we're the savages.
That's right.
We are the savages. As the first chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff said, we're technological geniuses, but ethical infants.
Yes.
And we're more like infants who are playing with razor blades.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of Avatar, I think that the greatest level of sophistication is when you can bring very sophisticated information into simple form. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes Avatar, that you could tell that level of sophisticated truth in almost like a cartoon, which is what religion and spirituality is. And there are religious and spiritual themes throughout.
Absolutely. And they're there by design. They're not accidental. I mean, the film, I think, was dismissed by some critics as being too simplistic, too familiar a story, just a sort of Pocahontas story and so on. And I don't think they realized that it was by design a kind of Trojan horse to allow you to deal with a very familiar and simple plot line that has these other layers and textures to it, which was my focus. My focus was on the design, the fabric of the world, the feeling evoked by the watching, so you can synthesize the plot or sum up the plot quite quickly, but you can't sum up the experience quickly. And so it was experiential filmmaking. That was the primary goal.
Well, it's a portal. And you enter it
Exactly.
on whatever level
Exactly.
you enter it, which is, once again, what to me makes your mind so fascinating, because it's like, you see this, you see that, and it's all 360 degrees. It's all there. In terms of the spiritual themes, first there is, and before we leave the idea of how the quote unquote savages are the sophisticated ones, one of the things that is so deep for me about the relationship of the Na'vi to the land is when Grace Augustine keeps talking about everything that's going on there. Not only is it beautiful, not only is it bioluminescent, not only, like you said, you can enter it on the level of the beauty, but when she talks about all the connectivity and the
Yes.
connectivity that
Right.
actually, it is greater even than the human brain.
Right.
And the connectivity of the people to the earth, the connectivity of the people to each other, that they see into each other.
Yeah.
Even at the end, in Egyptian mythology, Isis has to go down when Osiris, I mean, she goes down into the underworld with him. So when the last
right.
scene is that she actually goes into the underworld and she brings him back up.
Yeah.
So so it's almost like all the Christian mythology is there, the Buddhist principles are there. Then you come up with the Egyptian mythology. So I don't know. I mean, I know that you could not have done this without a conscious understanding of many of these principles. But in terms of the ecumenicism of it and
Yeah.
the universality of these principles, I thought was amazing.
Well, I do think, certainly you've got, certain kind of Messiah myths that go through, and
Yes.
Osiris, death and redemption and resurrection and all that sort of thing. But I think I was consciously referencing the sort of pre-Christian pagan mystery religions that are more goddess-based and more kind of holistic and nature worshiping, and less sort of patriarchal than that which came subsequently.
So I hope you enjoyed the clip of my conversation with James Cameron, and that you'll go over to the Marianne Williamson podcast channel on YouTube in order to hear the whole thing. And don't forget, please subscribe.